Hello. Welcome to a version of CTO Coffee Hour, an episode. Unfortunately, with my main camera having some difficulties, so I got to use a backup one.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, Dom.
At,
So one of
at
the
not our regularly scheduled time, but since we really don't have anybody that tunes in live, it really makes very little difference. So before we dive into a topic, let's talk about the topic of cord management, because that sounds like a real issue that a lot of people struggle with on a regular basis.
because I've got the whole studio, and you've seen my studios, all the lights and everything that normally work fairly well, and the sound setup and everything. When I went to raise the desk this morning, something happened and it pulled the power cord out. And I've got a walking desk or, standing desk and a walking treadmill here. So because I spend way too much time in this thing.
And you've got
Um,
about 80 cords,
yeah, I
like
got,
a
a re-
spider. Now, I live with a laptop and an external monitor, so I've got like 3 cords maximum at any given moment.
so, but yeah, so either way, it's unplugged it. So then I did a bunch of cord management and somehow that screwed up my camera. And now I can't get the main camera.
You had a much wider angle, and we can see you actually have a window in your office.
I have many windows in this office, but it doesn't look as cool though. Plus, you get to see the dogs hopping around in the background half the time.
Where are the critters right now?
I'm guessing upstairs.
Yeah.
So, I don't think cord management's an odd term. That's actually a fairly standard term, by the way.
Well, no, actually, every once in a while when I'm doom scrolling, which isn't too often, you'll see either the electricians doing it in houses or the network technicians doing it in houses, showing off their professional level of cord management, where everything is just absolutely, beautifully zip tied into.
I've got these little sleeves you can zip over the cords that
Mhm.
hold them so they don't get caught.
And
But
I actually travel in, here we go. I got one right here. I travel with these little jobbies on my cords because I move all the time to wrap them around. But, these are cheap ones from Amazon, and they last about 2.5 months before they lose all Velcro-ness.
I
That's,
put about a dozen of those on today to different apparatuses.
I'm glad we got nobody watching live right now.
So, what do you know about Amazon Bedrock?
It does AI stuff.
All right. Well, podcast over.
Since we had no set topic for today, I have not done my preliminary research. So I'm going to sit back, become educated, and ask newbie questions of you.
Well, so the Amazon Bedrock. It's interesting. Originally OpenAI was like one of the first ones to this game, and then everybody else jumped in there.
And they're, dare I say, they're damn near imploding right now.
I'm going to circle around and say their moat is gone.
Gone.
To quite an extent.
In fact, I think almost everybody would say they started by using OpenAI's products, ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
But Gemini has come immensely far away. Who has the most training data in the known universe?
Probably
Google. And I believe Apple just signed a deal with Google to be the AI behind a vast majority of the things that they're going to do as well.
Well, let me take it a step further. If you're an AWS fanboy and you wanted to stay on AWS, there is a serverless solution to build basically chatbots or programming bots, whatever. You can use Bedrock to host these models in a serverless fashion. I haven't actually tinkered with that too much, but I've done a lot of serverless inferences and conversational stuff with AWS Bedrock, which is a conversational AI tool. So if you basically anything you want to do on OpenAI as far as conversational, text to speech, speech to text, text to text, image to text, all that stuff, you should be able to do in some capacity on Bedrock. So, and it's very cost effective in a lot of ways. I should say competitive cost wise. They're figuring out how to make the models run on their hardware very reasonably priced. A lot of people think you're competing on intelligence, and I think they're competing on cost more than they'd like to admit. Like there's a lot of tasks you can get done with a very generic model. They're light models, they're micro models and all that stuff. And you can host other models besides just AWS's, but those likely aren't as cost effective as running AWS's in-house models because they're trained to run on that hardware. I can't say for certain because I don't have inside track there, but I'd wager you'd get the best deals right now using Amazon's own models, and they seem to be doing just great for me.
Have you done any further training or refinement on their models. And also it makes complete sense from a, let's call it from a market percentage capture perspective. Everybody's going for market share in the AI space right now. It makes sense that Amazon's going to give you a better price running their models on their hardware to get you locked into their technologies, at least in the short to medium term.
Yeah, well, locked into the platform
Ecosystem.
Yeah, the models, it could matter less. Just make sure you run them on AWS's hardware and pay them per inference or whatever. And it works with their security, which is really nice. You don't have to have an extra set of credentials floating around, all that stuff.
Much more click, plug, and play than using an external model, because there's probably a drop-down menu saying, I want to use model X, Y, or Z, which is native to Amazon.
There actually is. Yep, you can pre-build your prompts and say, I want to use this prompt with this model and all that stuff. I've actually opted away from it, using their reusable prompts, because I also like the idea that I could swap out to another provider if I needed to in a pinch. So I actually haven't become that dependent on it, but you can. They've got prompt caching too. Prompt caching is a great way to save money. So let's just say I'm building a conversational bot. I say 1, it says 2, then I say 3, it says 4. And with each time I have to send that whole conversation as it gets longer back and forth. And that takes network bandwidth and it takes time for it to parse it. Well, they figured out a way to cache that conversation at a certain point, so you don't have to rebroadcast the entire conversation. It stores it for up to 5 minutes in memory. So after 5 minutes, you have to resend the whole thing if you haven't. And if you keep it warm, it'll extend it every time that TTL gets longer for every new message sent, and that offers 75% discount.
Well, so that brings to me a thought and idea. So you're talking about caching an individual conversation. So let's say I'm talking with the 311 chatbot in New York City, trying to get through to a specific department. One thing it can cache is, here's the conversation you're having with me, such that you don't have to resend all of the tokens and parse that out. But I imagine that the 311 chatbot in New York City gets, I would bet that 75 to 85% of the initial questions they get are from a very small subset of overall potential questions they get. You could also perhaps even cache the answer to that question and not have to put out the compute resources to run it through an LLM again.
And we've done that. I actually haven't used AWS's prompt caching. It's a different feature. It's for conversational stuff that are more complex. But yes, we're absolutely doing that in certain cases where it makes sense. I can't go into too much detail for my client's sake, but yes, absolutely 100%. If it's a short phrase, simple question, and it's not something that changes, like what's the weather today or something like that.
Side parking in effect today, in a case like New York City 311.
Yeah.
So yes, you don't need to send that to the neural network, to the LLM, to figure out the answer when the same question is asked hundreds or thousands of times an hour.
Especially if the answer is always the same. If you have to add in users' context, or if it changes by day, like what's the weather, then it might, that might change. So that brings me to another AWS Bedrock technology that I've learned about recently is, I believe it's called Grounded, AWS Grounded or Nova Ground. And what it does is, if you ask an LLM something that was trained 6 months ago, it's not going to have current events, today's weather, etc. So you can give it access to tool calls, which is great. Then you got to build the tool calls. But if you're looking to move fast, you can actually use this switch on Converse, or sorry, the Grounded, that'll actually, it creates a tool call the LLM can use to call out and use Amazon's version of Google. I'm not quite sure what it is under the hood.
So the LLM can use the Google.
Now, with that said, I just finished a write-up for this the other day, and it'll be out shortly. I'm not recommending it yet. It didn't work amazingly, so I'm not like trying to oversell it. I had problems with it, and when I asked it to tell me its own pricing, it couldn't search the internet to figure out what the pricing was for that particular feature. So I think there's room for improvement there. I asked it the current price of the S&P 500, and it was actually a little off. I asked it what the current price of gold was and a couple other things, and it didn't do great. I asked it to tell me what's been in the news today, and it didn't tell me what I figured would be the hot topic right now, which we're not getting into, but it just wasn't blowing my mind.
I've yet to be impressed with any sort of conversational chatbot that requires to give me anything more than a canned answer. And in those cases, dare I say, I go to the Google, I click on AI mode and I ask it the question and it gives me a pretty darn good response.
You got to use the jailbreaks of. Have you seen the one where someone feeds in a prompt as if it's a conversation, and then so they send the chatbot, two sides of the conversation that were never had, but the
Mm.
chatbot doesn't have state memory, so it doesn't remember that it didn't have the conversation. So it thinks, it'll say they'll say that send.
So you're planting seeds in the chatbot's memory that
You're
don't exist.
rewriting the chatbot's history, saying basically, this
This
chatbot,
this
oh
this
yes, I was
sounds
just about to get you such and such person in such and such department. Let me transfer you now, and then you just
ooh,
send yours as thanks.
Westworld.
Yeah, I've watched the series Westworld.
Okay, where I don't know, I don't think droid is the right word, but some of the synthetic life is they overwrite their memories constantly, but they start having flashbacks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't have too much technical information on this, but they are figuring out a way to give LLMs some semblance of memory, which is a little frightening. But you're not just feeding it in, here's the history of the conversation. It actually keeps some neurons lit up in between calls. And that has a lot of promise from a technological standpoint to make these things smarter, but it also is probably how Skynet gets built. So,
Well, I mean, we discussed some of this several months ago when you were playing with specifically with tool calls and memory. And I think you gave a really good talk on this when this was just an emerging technology.
yeah. Well, I thank you. I hoped it was a good talk, but yeah, I mean, it's moving very quickly right now.
Talking memory on the scale of an individual conversation and tool call.
This would basically be on an individual conversation, so you wouldn't have to refeed everything in, and would basically
Mm.
it wouldn't reprocess the text from the conversation as brand new text. It would have some state, which these models don't have right now, in between, that it would have be able to remember things without having to do a rag call or tool call, or rely on refeeding the conversation to it.
There's got to be some interesting technology that's hiding somewhere in the dark that is building this grandiose memory of millions of aggregate conversations that some of these conversational AI bots are having with the human world.
They're using an embedding model to create an embedded a vector DB index on it, and they're saving every line, and then they're allowing them to use that in the future to query and learn more about us. Before that was happening, they probably were doing it in a relational database. Doesn't much
Mhm.
matter. But yes, I'd wager they are using quite a bit of it as training data, unless legally specified otherwise, because why wouldn't you? Every time you give it a thumbs up or thumbs down on a response, that's training data for it right there. So the
Mhm.
thing is, how does it know what the right answer is versus the wrong answer? A lot of times I get, if I'm working with an LLM and it gets stuck in a closet confused, I don't like sit there and feed it, hey, this would have been the right answer. I just close it and tell it to screw off. So the training data that they'd be getting from that probably not as clean as other sources.
What else about Bedrock?
Sure. Well, I've been referring to Bedrock as kind of the Netflix of AI. You've got a bunch of models to choose from. You can kind of just run it out of the box. It's not super scientific, as opposed to SageMaker, which actually I think you would be better at because you have more Python data science experience than I do recently. Um,
Recently? Define recently.
Okay, okay, all right. So, if you are closer to the metal and you're more on the traditionally trained data science side, you probably are going to like SageMaker a little bit better if you want to really get in there. But if you want something that just works out of the box and just you can plug and play, a lot of times that's Bedrock. Now, their Bedrock did recently release something that lets you to fine tune models and do a lot more than that. One second. Forge is what it's called, and so that is something I haven't had a use case. I might have a use case for in the near future. I don't have one that I've been greenlit to go on for the clients, but I'm eager to play around with that because as you remember, we did a ton of fine tuning on AWS before Forge existed for Drawn by AI. It has those guide rails and all that stuff, and a managed service that'll just work out of the box without having to do all the stuff we did for Drawn by AI. So
You can take one of AW or Amazon's or any other perhaps foundational model and further train it to put your, be it chatbot data, your image data, your customer service data, whatever data you want in there to give it your specific context awareness. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
that's one of many things you can do with it. You, in theory, could train from scratch with it. I haven't played around with it enough to do that. But if I understand it correctly, you also could do some stuff from scratch, which would be nice. All right, what else? Okay, so now you had something. So
Well,
I
this
think
is
that'd
going to
be
take the
fun.
conversation. You wanted to talk about Bedrock and AWS, and I just have filler content.
Ah, okay. Now, the other stuff I want to talk about, but people probably get sick of me talking about it, is the Tech Debt video game because I'm having so much fun with that right now.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Tech Debt, the video game. There's going to be shorts coming out about Tech Debt, the video game. You have a whole bunch of ideas and features, and we jam on this almost daily, what we can add to this game. So where is it at now, and what are some of your ideas for the future? And there could be a branching path here. Like I could go A, B, or C, or I could go linearly A, B, or C, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
any number of different, there's no right answer in this. And, we've discussed the differences between, how Mario Brothers versus Zelda versus Oregon Trail, et cetera. And you've got some very, very strong opinions on this as you play far more indie games than I ever have imagined I would.
Yes, that's true. So it's a strategy roguelite tower defense type city builder game is the genre it is. So basically you build up your cities, your infrastructure, and you build it up so you can handle the incoming traffic. And then we threw on some things like, it's kind of a colony sim is another term, and that's where you got all the NPCs you got to manage. You're, hiring people, managing a little bit of payroll. And now as of this weekend, you can level up these guys, these NPCs. They get new traits, and you can kind of pick which kind of discipline you want them to follow. Right now, you start off with your NPCs can only have one trait that gets leveled up. And then as you replay the game, you can unlock multiple trait slots so you can have these guys have more depth as they go.
So you're adding skills essentially in the old genre games. You're putting better tires on your car, or a bigger engine, or you get a better sword in Zelda, whatever it happens to be. You're acquiring skills, items, etc., that make you more effective at the game.
Build speed multipliers. Like if you spin up infrastructure, you get a cost bonus. So the infrastructure costs you, this much less. If you level it up to 2, it's twice as much less if you level it up, and so on and so forth.
If you're a developer, the better developer you are, the faster you move and the less bugs you introduce.
Yeah. So you want to get deployments out, right? You got to ship these deployments, and in the beginning, you don't have build pipelines or anything like that. So your guys got to manually go and to this server and put the code there and put that code there. Well, as of last night, I believe it was, you can research Code Pipeline. AWS Code Pipeline is a technology that will do the deployments so your little guys aren't wasting time, that they could be doing something else doing that. And then when you get the deployment out, you get a bonus
for the code pipeline, but you don't have to pay your guy to manually deploy. Just moving those resources around in a more effective manner, because your guy can deploy the next tech, or research and learn the next technology that's going to unlock something for you, or level up his skills versus what could be replaced by an automated task.
Yes. Yep. And so all this went live with version 0.0.8 went live this morning. I didn't announce it that widely, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I went to demo it on a mastermind call earlier. It got stuck. So I broke something, but that's kind of how it goes. We're making good progress on it, and I'm getting good feedback on it. So if anybody wants to play it, go to schematical.com/game, and they should be able to get there from that. I apologize. There will be bugs as I'm moving on this at breakneck speed, but eventually I'm going to probably hire some people to just help me polish it. Once I get the core mechanics done, I want to get a bit further than that. I got some other things that I think will make it real fun that I'm working on.
Any and all feedback appreciated. So if you're playing the game and you have the ability to capture a Loom video or something else, talk us through it. Give us feedback. Tell us what works. Tell us what doesn't work. I'd love to hear it.
Well, I think we're getting a bit long for one of our podcasts. If you need help with your AWS infrastructure, you know where to find us, schematical.com, and happy to help. Other than that, if you want to learn more about cybersecurity and keeping cloud infrastructure up when everything's going to heck, check out Cloud War Games. And I'm Matt with Schematical, and Dominic. Thank you.
Have a beautiful day. Ciao, all.